What was your name?
My name's Braxton.
Braxton. Okay, we got some trivia for you. And if you win, you're walking away with free Jack Link's beef jerky.
Sweet.
Okay. I'm Jackson Wayne Paul, and I'm here at Brigham Young University. And we're going to be asking people why God commanded Lehi and his family to eat raw meat in the wilderness. Do you have any idea why God would tell them not to cook their meat?
It's a very strange request. I mean, maybe to test their faith.
I don't know. That's a good question.
That is a good question.
I don't really know why.
Maybe, man, did they specifically say it in there?
Well, I guess it's not common knowledge as to why God commanded Lehi and his family not to cook their meat in the wilderness. Well, let's explore this a little bit better. Welcome to another edition of Between the Lines, where we take apart the little textual details in the scriptures that just bring it to life. And today we've got a doozy for you. It's actually something insane that our buddy Jim Gee helped us to discover and realize. And let's get right into it. We're going to be reading 1 Nephi chapter 17, verses 2 and 12. Hand me those glasses. Crazy we have the same prescription.
I know, and that we have to look over the glasses to actually read. But it says in verse 2 in chapter 17, it says, "And so great were the blessings of the Lord upon us." Now remember, this is when they're getting to the land of Bountiful. "So great were the blessings of the Lord upon us, that while we did live upon raw meat in the wilderness, our women did give plenty of suck for their children, and were strong, yea, even like unto the men. And they began to bear their journeyings without murmurings." And then in verse 12, it says, "For the Lord had not hitherto suffered that we should make much fire as we journeyed in the wilderness. For he said, I will make thy food become sweet, that ye cook it not." So the details we're going to be focusing on are: first, the Lord commanded them to eat raw meat. Second, he said that he would make it, quote unquote, sweet. And third, them eating raw meat would still allow for their women to give plenty of suck or breast milk for their children. Now, let's ask why these details were put in the Book of Mormon. And Jackson, what did we learn from our friend Jim Gee?
So he is a world traveler, as we know, and
Shameless plug, look up Discovery Expeditions and Adventures and go on a trip with Jim. He goes everywhere around the world.
highly recommend it. He's a wealth of knowledge. So while he was preparing for his first ever expedition to Antarctica, he wanted to learn everything he could about the region. And so he went in and studied actually the personal journals of the early travelers to Antarctica. And he came across the journal of a guy named Roald Amundsen, who actually won the race to the South Pole against a guy with the dopest name ever. His name is Robert Falcon Scott. Such a beast.
So cool.
Not that big of a beast, because he lost to Roald Amundsen to the South Pole because his guys kept getting sick and getting something called scurvy.
Most of them actually died. Robert Falcon Scott himself died on the journey. He'd even make it to the end.
Yeah, he had a watery grave.
Icy grave.
The thing that made the difference, though, was Roald Amundsen was able to keep himself and his guys nourished and healthy for the whole journey.
The reason why Roald Amundsen and his team had the upper hand is because years earlier, he was at a place called Kingfisher Island, where he lived for 2 years with the Inuit people. We commonly know them as Eskimos.
The people that live in the igloos. Yeah.
And while he was there, he actually learned how to make igloos. He learned how to survive in that harsh environment, how to run a team of dogs on sleds, as well as how to hunt and to prepare food. And when he learned that from the Inuits, he learned that they would eat all of their meat raw. And somehow, with their diet of raw seal and fish, they were able to stay alive.
However, it wasn't until further scientific analysis were they able to discover actually the difference in nutrients between raw and cooked meat. And when they tested raw meat, they found that it contained ascorbic acid, or in other words, vitamin C. However, when you cook it, it evaporates out of the meat, thus leaving just the remaining nutrients. Crazy.
So let's apply this to what we just read. So in there, we're reading about Lehi and his family who are traveling in a barren wasteland, similar to the barren wasteland up in the north that the Eskimos lived in. Now, during that period of time, especially during the sojourning in the wilderness for 8 years, we don't know exactly where they were, but the general area included, first, the largest sand desert in the world, Rub al-Khalid, or what is known as the empty quarter. Also, even if you're not in the empty quarter, the whole place is just kind of a barren wasteland that is very, very difficult to
Not
survive
many fruits
in.
and vegetables.
That said, though, who knows where the Lord was taking them with the Liahona? But we do know one thing, that the fruits and vegetables and the vitamin C containing food that they would have lived on in Jerusalem was going to be scarce. And so when the Lord asked them to not cook their food and to eat their meat, and he would make it sweet. This is the other super interesting thing, is vitamin C, ascorbic acid, kind of has a sweet taste to it. Like candies have ascorbic acid in them. And so the meat actually has a sweet taste when you let it sun dry and you eat that meat. The last little clue that we'll talk about that suggests that the reason the Lord asked them to not cook their meat and to eat it raw is because of the vitamin C content is actually found in those verses where it talks about how the women were able to give plenty of suck while they were in the wilderness because they were giving birth to children, right? Now, this is really interesting. I've had 2 children. I haven't personally, obviously my wife has, but she has breastfed both of them and breastfeeding one of them right now. And one thing that she does in order to keep her milk supply high is take vitamin C supplements, because vitamin C increases breast milk production, which is so interesting right there. So they need vitamin C to survive and have scurvy. They're also having children, and they don't have formula. The babies, they would need breast milk to survive, and eating this raw meat was increasing their breast milk supply. All right, so in summary, let's go back to those 3 details that we talked about at the beginning of this episode. 1, the Lord commanded them to eat raw meat. Why would they need to do that? Because it's high in ascorbic acid, which would give them the vitamin C that they would need to be able to survive the harsh climate. 2, that the meat was made sweet. Well, ascorbic acid is used in many candies because it has a sweeter taste. And 3, the women gave plenty of suck. Remember, vitamin C increases breast milk supply.
That's crazy how good old Joe Smith, when he was just writing up this story, right? He's like, you know what? Let's just make them eat raw meat for 8 years. Just
for
cause.
no reason. And it's going to increase their breast milk supply. And even though no one knew this scientific truth until years after, almost 100 years after the Book of Mormon was published. So, but yeah, he made it all up.
Anyways, it's so cool when you can take apart the scriptures and look at the details. Jim always says, you got to read the details, and he says details like that. So if you have better insight than we do, please leave in the comments down below your wisdom on why Joseph Smith would have just randomly put this in the Book of Mormon. And we're grateful for you joining us in this episode of Between the Lines. And until next time, stay curious and stay hungry.